Hey everyone, it's Lorenzo here at Hack Your Leadership and a thoughtful Thursday episode today. Please check out our YouTube channel, Hacking Your Leadership Podcast. Today, I want to talk about delegation. There's an article that I read recently on HBR called Stop Feeling Guilty About Delegating by Dina Smith. And I thought it was really, really good. And because it calls out what tends to stop leaders from delegating, or this feeling that they're asking their team to do much for them, or giving up this idea that if you have kind of delegated the ownership of a task or a responsibility, that you're no longer adding value as a leader. And what I love about this article is kind of just the first, kind of couple paragraphs here. Dina says, most leaders understand the payoff of delegating. You free yourself to focus on higher priority work while offering your team opportunities for growth and development. While this is an excellent idea in theory, many good leaders struggle to put it into practice. And so there can be a lot of reasons why leaders maybe struggle with delegating. And I think that, what she really touches on in this article is around this idea of feeling guilty when doing it. And, there's a lot of reasons why that can become a thing, especially this day and age when we're talking so much about creating experiences for people that are inspiring, that are empowering, when we're talking about, do the work that only you can do, when we talk about things like making sure that you're not overloading people with responsibility. But really at the heart of this, when it comes to the guilty piece of this is where I think this article does a really, really nice job of kind of breaking down what you should do. The first thing that Dina talks about is to challenge your guilt. That there are two types of guilt, justified and unjustified. And, making sure that you should feel guilty in certain situations. You should feel guilty if you are delegating work that you should be doing, and it has no real relevance to the person's development or things like that. There's no real experience to it. It's just work that you don't want to do. And I think I think I shared a while ago, maybe a couple years ago, on the podcast around. Typically, when I delegate things like that, to release myself from the guilt, I tell somebody that's exactly what I'm doing. I will say, hey, I need you to get this done, pretty much because I don't want to do it. And it might be a laugh, it might be a chuckle, but at least there's some honesty and some transparency in that element. And for the most part, leaders can appreciate that idea because, it's important to make sure that that there are times when you should absolutely delegate. There are times when it will be more work for someone. There are times when it may feel like you should be doing this, but really you don't have the bandwidth or the time to, and or it's not your job, and that's a big part of it. Dina also talks about flip your script on delegating. People who feel guilty about delegating worry they're burdening their team. So instead of making it feel like you're burdening people with the work, allowing people to make, contributions, allowing people to show up and take on the responsibility, feeling good about, meaningful work, those types of things are really, really important. And so not just thinking about that everything associated with delegating is around burdening people, but the idea is that a lot of times delegating, like I said before, should be done and can be really, really helpful in development. She also talks about improving your delegation skills. How do you do that? How do you communicate those types of things? How do you make sure that you're providing times to check up, that it's not just a blind delegation, let somebody go do it, and then just, I guess we'll see what happens, but that you're building in time to make sure that they have the support that they need, they have the clarity that they need, and that they get the recognition they deserve when they get these tasks done. She talks about protecting your team in different ways. We've talked about this as well a lot, just around creating that shield. We call it kind of providing air support in our acronym around change. And this idea is that making sure that the external things that are happening around your people aren't creating confusion, aren't creating all these extra tasks, aren't making it overwhelming, so that when you have to delegate the things they have to get done, they can be focused on that, it can be clear about that, and they're not caught up in all the other million things that are going on. She also talks about preparing for temporary discomfort. There's it can be tough sometimes, the guilt associated with continuing to delegate stuff, and And if there is, like I said, if everybody's busy, if everybody has tasks going on, if it feels like it's another thing on top of another thing on top of another thing, that can be a lot. There can be a lot of guilt associated with that, and that can show up with making it harder to have conversations with people, and or sitting down with somebody across the table and saying, "Hey, I need you to take this on," and you just stare at each other because you both know that they are busy. There's a lot going on with them, and that you are also busy, and it's just like that. The only option here is to get this work done. So, I do want to talk a little bit about a time when I learned a lesson about delegation. But first, I want to give it up to a few words from our sponsors. Okay, so I learned a really big lesson as a kind of a young leader, new enroll type of leader. And that was just around the idea of understanding how delegation can really be helpful in establishing trust of a team, because by giving people the opportunity to take on something that is, maybe a little bit beyond their scope, or a stretch assignment, or responsibility that you typically would do as their leader, how that can be super helpful in letting the team know that you do trust them, and that you're willing to allow them to stretch themselves, to potentially make a couple of mistakes, like we all do, and really be able to help work them through that and develop them through that. And for me, early on, it was this idea of scheduling. And for those in the retail industry, or in an industry where not only like what time your people come to work, but like what they do within those hours, when you have multiple responsibilities or tasks of a certain job title. Scheduling is critical. It always is. It's one of the things that it's going to make or break you in a lot of instances. It's going to provide you with an opportunity to have the right amount of support at the right times for customers and things like that. And it's also going to make it more, efficient and effective when you have the right people in the right places doing work that they enjoy, or that they're really, really good at. So like it is absolutely critical piece of industries like retail. And as a newer leader, and typically in this industry, you will tend to kind of move your leadership career by having maybe a small portion of the operational responsibilities of a team or a department. Then you become like a supervisory level, where maybe you have a smaller team, in the scope of a larger team. Then you go into kind of like an assistant manager, where now you have maybe multiple leaders of smaller teams that report into you. And then of course, like becoming a general manager, where you've got multiple managers, that have multiple teams. And so the scheduling aspects of all those places is so important. And I learned this lesson because I was spending a lot of time, in front of a computer screen, spending a lot of time kind of playing Tetris, trying to make this thing work, and taking all these things into account. And then really just, I think I was over-indexing too much, and probably like, I wouldn't even know if I would call it empathy. It's almost like professional immaturity of having a lot of guilt when it comes to how people want to work, what they prefer, what they want to do, and then feeling like you're a leader that has to make all those dreams come true. Like, I can figure this out. I can make everybody come to work every day and love every part of their job by creating a schedule that like takes all these things into consideration. And like, that's just not a reality. And I was spending a lot of time trying to make this happen. And one of my people had approached me while I was doing this work, and was like, "Hey, I would love to get some time to talk about some of this, kind of developmental experience they were going through later in the day." And I said, "Well, I have to get the schedule done. Like, this is the most important thing." And I was like, and it's just got to be right. And they said, well, they were like, "It can't be that difficult. Like, I could probably help with that if it's taking you this long." And I was very quick to kind of shoo them away, like, No, like there's just so many things here. There's so much stuff that's happening. Like, you just wouldn't get it, basically. It's kind of like how I kind of shooed them away, which just sounds so cringe now. But it's the reality of like how we grow and learn as leaders. And they said, okay. And they just kind of walked away. And just the way they said, okay, just didn't sit right with me. Cause like, it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks in the moment. Like, oh, this was not, like that's not what I meant. It's not what I wanted them to feel. It's not kind of what was going on. And so I kind of paused, and I went to them and I said, "Look, first I apologized. I was like, sorry, like, this is a big deal. Schedule's a really big deal. I want to make sure it's right. I'm doing my best part of it." And they were like, "Well, like, I get it, because I had to do schedules in my previous job, And again, this is one of the things that as a leader, sometimes we tend to not look beyond somebody's title, or we know where they've worked before, we know what they're capable of delivering on, but we don't dig deep enough to even realize what types of tasks or responsibilities they had. And I was like, oh, and they said, yeah, like I understand it, and they said, so like what I had to learn was that you have to make a schedule that's best for kind of the business, and then you then can go through and kind of tweak to do what's maybe, either more fun or more aligned with what people would like to do after you've kind of built that first. But you really have to have it in a way that people understand that we're going to prioritize what makes the most amount of sense for the business first. And he goes, and it's just something that he's like, I struggled with for a while, and then I figured it out. He's like, and then I communicated it, and I let people know that I'm going to absolutely be as fair as I can. I'm going to take these things into account, but I'm going to build something that's consistent for our customers and for our business. And then I will take a look to see what I can do. And if there are things that you need or things that come up, I want to be as flexible as possible, which means that we're all going to have to take, parts of the schedule or parts of responsibilities that maybe we don't prioritize or that we don't necessarily want to do as often, but we're going to have to do those things to then be able to give us the flexibility we need when each of us needs something specific, whether it's time off or certain tasks or time to get other things done. And it was a great learning moment for me, but what it also did is allow me an opportunity to delegate the schedule. And so I was able to work with that person, allow them the time to be a part of helping to build out that first structure of the schedule and communicate that with a larger team and say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what we're going to do. This team member that you all know has experience in this. I want to allow him the opportunity to kind of build the framework of our schedule so that it's very fair and it's based upon the business first. And then I will go through it, and make sure that we're making some small tweaks here and there to provide you with all the preferences that you all have. But our intent here is to make sure that we have the flexibility needed to take care of all of you when you need things that you need. And, we had to work through it. It was a little bit uncomfortable. We had to have some conversations with people that may have been, expecting or spoiled by what they had in the past. And we had to work through a lot of that. But it was a great reminder in thinking about, while I felt there was a major responsibility in the idea of scheduling, and there was a lot of excuses that I gave to myself while I couldn't be delegated, it built a lot of trust with not only the team member who was helping to take it on, but with the rest of the team to say that there are a lot of things that I may be responsible for that are really, really important. And of course, I will stay very close to them, but by allowing them to be a part of some of these other types of experiences and responsibilities, I was continuing to show them that I trusted them, that they were capable of delivering more, and that they could be a larger part of, the things that we were working on. So it was a really good lesson for me, and it helped me to work through just the element of delegation that did include some pieces of guilt, that did include some pieces of, maybe ego, anxiety, what I assumed to be, things that couldn't be delegated. Was I doing the things that only I could do? And by all means, yes, I was 100% responsible for delivering an effective schedule, but that it didn't mean that I had to sit in front of a computer for a long time by myself trying to make this whole thing come together. So thanks for checking out the show today. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo, and have a great day.